There is something like 100,000 million neurons in your brain, and each one of them make about 10,000 connections. One of the great quests that we're all starting to embark on now is to understand how all these connections work together. My name is Perry Bartlett, Director of the Queensland Brain Institute at the University of Queensland. So my training was somewhat unique in that I started off doing dentistry, and then I did a PhD in immunology looking at problems to do with graft rejection and transplantation. And that sort of segued into neurobiology. I had a concept of looking at the brain that was totally different than people who had grown up looking at the brain. You know, I had nothing stopping me thinking that the brain should make new nerve cells. Whereas if you'd actually been raised in the dogma, you'd never have looked at that. So I had this opportunity to come to Queensland to set up a new institute, in which we called the Queensland Brain Institute, and that was set up some 7 years ago. What's unique about this place is that we've taken people using different models of trying to understand how the brain works. That is, we've got people working on how fruit flies learn to navigate, how honeybees learn to navigate and memorise things, through to humans. And all these people are sitting side by side for the first time. So I think we've got a very unique flavour to this institute, not just competing in terms of the traditional way, but in fact pushing the boundaries by combining technologies and models of understanding fundamental brain function that no other institute in the world is addressing. Neuroscience has really been fantastically exciting over the last 10 years. The whole way we view the brain has changed. Most people still think about the brain as a fairly hardwired, connected network that changes very little, has very little opportunity to repair or to change. But what we've found in the last 10 years is that, in fact, this is a pretty plastic organ. In fact, the way it functions is through being plastic. The understanding of diseases and how we might address them, I think, is going to remarkably change over the next 2 decades as we learn more and more about function. Now, you know, in the community at the moment, 3 of the 5 top diseases which cause loss of early death or loss of ability to work are dementia, a stroke, and the worst of all, depression. So it's almost like in depression, people lose this ability to form new memories to some degree, that their ability to form new memories is lost. So I think depression is very much one of those areas that we need to understand, perhaps more at a global level. What is the wiring that's going wrong? We're looking at ways of overcoming this loss of ability to make these new neurons, and you know, we're getting closer to being able to achieve those aims. Dementia is just a burgeoning problem. There's going to be 1.5 million people by 2050 have dementia. Our understanding of this is changing rapidly. More and more we're thinking that perhaps much of dementia or cognitive decline is perhaps more of a physiological rundown rather than a structural loss. It appears that most of the hardware is still there. We just need to know how to rejuvenate it. If we can change those cognitive outcomes, and I think we can over the next decade or so, then we're going to change their lives, the economic costs, free up money for other essential parts. Creating a discovery culture is a difficult thing. It needs passion from the next generation of scientists coming through, and it needs money. Taking risks is what this institute's about. It's what any institute who's going to discover things has to be able to take risks. This is where the discoveries come from. They don't come from someone following a path that someone else has worn before. And we need more of it. We need more discoveries in this country. We don't want to be a cargo cult country where we take someone else's discovery and try and add a few bob at the end. So you've got to have the money and the resources to take those risks, not to write a grant and wait 2 years to see if you're going to get funded or not. You have to be funded at a level that you can take risks, which might take 5 years to come to fruition. They might fail, but if you don't take risks, you don't win prizes, you don't make major discoveries, you don't change the social economic outcomes of this community. Underpinning a good economy are major discoveries. In Silicon Valley, the biotech revolution in California, those economies have grown out of discoveries. We must have the ability to make real discoveries that will build an industry or change the life of our people in a way that's dramatic. The reason we put this institute together was because I believed, and all my colleagues believed, before we could combat the diseases, we needed to understand how the functions were regulated, and I think we're getting closer to that. We see our research not only leading to cures for diseases, but leading to ways of taking this understanding of learning into the classroom. I mean, education at the moment doesn't equal learning. In fact, it doesn't equal learning. There's very little relationship to that. But now with an understanding how we think learning's occurring, what are the key features of this? The next 10 years is going to revolutionise how we deliver learning into the classroom, into reskilling, everything else as well. It's estimated, for example, if we could bring our our scores of maths and reading and various other attributes of students up to the level of Finland, for example, that we would double our GDP by 2050. Our capacity to learn and our capacity to perhaps overcome some illnesses is there, and we just need to take advantage of those mechanisms to make them come true.